Let's do this. All right, this is Luke Eccles from FantasyBroSports, here to talk to you about wide receiver rankings for the upcoming 2018 season. Super excited about wide receivers. Wide receivers make or break your team. A lot of times they're the most consistent week after week uh, producers if you get one of the top 10, 12 guys. But in some cases, they could be the most up and down producers if you wait and have to rely on some of the boomer bust wide receiver candidates, because there's plenty of them out there. There's a lot of strategy that comes into wide receivers. There's number one wide receivers on all teams, more or less. Some teams have a clear cut number one wide receiver, like the Atlanta Falcons with Julio Jones, or the New York Giants with Odell Beckham, where there's some wide receivers that are kind of a 1A and a 1B, like Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, or Adam Thielen and uh, Stephon Diggs. So, there's a lot of different wide receiver combos. Plus, when you look at, how the defensive backs and the defensive schemes play into wide receivers, sometimes they're double covering the number one guy the entire game. Maybe, putting a guy over top and then having somebody go one on one with him the whole game, and then that makes that number two wide receiver or for that specific team valuable. So, like if Julio Jones is getting double and triple covered in a certain game, Matt Ryan's probably going to look to Calvin Ridley or Muhammad Sanu to get receptions. Same with the Giants, whereas Odell Beckham is getting overcovered, Eli might have to look to Sterling Shepard or uh, Evan Ingram. So, there's a lot of strategy that comes into it from a game to game basis too. But I really feel like when it comes down to the draft strategy for wide receivers in particular, definitely not opposed to taking a top wide receiver at the back end of the first round. Definitely any time throughout the rest of the draft after that. It's all value. If there's a guy you're high on and think is going to either have a breakout year or is just going to be a corner piece to your team the whole year, draft him when you feel like it's the right value. If it's your guy, pick him up no matter what round he's in there, because wide receivers are a big consistent piece to your team from week to week. And looking down through the list of wide receivers, yeah, wide receivers are deep. There's three wide receivers on primarily most teams nowadays that play 70-75% of the snaps. So there's a lot of wide receiver production to go around, and that makes the depth of wide receiver really good this year. But I want to have one of those top wide receivers. I don't want to play DraftKings strategy every week with my wide receivers. I want to have one, hopefully two wide receivers that I can plug in there every week and look for 10 points. And if, they're have a blow up game, then, get up to the 20-25 point games maybe. But, I like to build my teams around wide receivers if, I'm in the back end of the first round. But definitely it all comes down to what you're looking for, how you're building your team around. So with that, I'm gonna kind of get into my rankings. I got DeAndre Hopkins number one overall. Just think he's just got the most talent in the league. I know that's tough to say because there's some talented wide receivers. um, Number one, Antonio Brown, but I've got DeAndre Hopkins number one overall this year. Playing in the right division. I think it's going to be all offense in that division as usual. He's got Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Projected to be my number 2 overall quarterback. He can do it all on the field. I mean, he's got the yards after the catch. He can go up and get the ball, jump ball from a defensive back. I mean, he takes short screens and takes him 80 yards to the house. So he's got it all. I feel like he's still ascending as a player. Just all in on Hopkins this year. He's my number 1 overall wide receiver. Some of that comes down to Deshaun Watson's health. Got to plan on him being healthy, starting the year healthy, so planning on that right now. But, definitely when it comes to the Texans offense, as pretty much every other offense in the league, with quarterback play means a lot. So as long as Watson's healthy, Hopkins is number 1 overall wide receiver for me. Number 2 overall, Antonio Brown, just been a staple there, number 1 wide receiver for years and years. Think he's going to be a great wide receiver again this year. I mean, like I said, I would not hesitate to take him at the back half of the first round. Just, with the Steelers this year, just kind of always surrounded by drama. Big Ben's getting a year older. Brown's getting a year older. Those guys got quite a bit of hits and miles on their tires. So I think their offense will still be good. It dropped Antonio Brown down to number 2 wide receiver this year. He's always been 10-plus targets a game, vocal point of the offense. I think he did suffer injury last year. I mean, he was just going hard after the ball, trying to make a play. But, new offensive coordinator, just got Brown number 2 overall this year. Odell Beckham's my number 3 overall wide receiver. Odell Beckham, once again, he's coming into training camp healthy. Just Giants are looking for a big bounce back year. They drafted Saquon Barkley. Everybody's back healthy. So, there's a lot of hype around the Giants this year. And a lot of that's due to Odell Beckham's health. I mean, he just makes tons of plays. Touchdowns, can score touchdowns from anywhere. With extra weapons on the Giants offense, it should open up the passing game, open up a little more holes down the field for Beckham to catch the, balls in space and be able to take them to the house. So, number 3 overall wide receiver is Odell Beckham. Number 4 overall wide receiver, love watching this guy play, Michael Thomas for the New Orleans Saints. Michael Thomas just been steady since he's come into the league, got better every year. He plays with Drew Brees, Hall of Fame quarterback, one of the best to play. His offense, the Saints offense, Sean Payton's great game planner on offense. They're always keeping the other teams guessing. Just so many weapons on that offense. It's hard to predict what they're going to do from game to game. But Michael Thomas is the number 1 overall wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints, so expect a huge year out of him. Would love to have him on any and all of my teams if be. So Michael Thomas, my number 4 wide receiver. So next up on the list, didn't fall too far there, but Julio Jones, number 5 overall wide receiver. Julio Jones, I feel like he's just awesome, maybe one of the most athletic wide receivers in the league. Just the drops, man. It's I saw him drop a couple deep passes last year that could have totally changed his fantasy year altogether. So he's still got some upside from where he's been because his touchdown production's been so low in the past couple years. His yards are up there, his targets are up there, but his touchdown production just isn't there. So he's definitely got some upside. I got him number 5 overall, but if he can eliminate some of those drops, he could get up to the number 1 overall wide receiver pretty easily. So next up, number 6 overall, got Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen had an awesome year last year. I have him right now as the 6th overall wide receiver. Would not hesitate taking him in the second round to be my number 1 wide receiver on my fantasy team. However, I will say, right now his average draft position is elevated compared to where I would take him at. So I'm probably not going to get Keenan Allen this year. Just think there's probably a little bit of last year's production baked into his average draft price. I still think he'll have a good year, projecting the Chargers to have an awesome offense again this year. Just probably tempering expectations a little bit on Keenan Allen. I got Mike Williams as a breakout player. I think he might take a little bit of production away from Keenan Allen maybe. But number 6 overall wide receiver for Keenan Allen, pretty good player. Wouldn't hesitate to draft him a bit. Number 7 overall wide receiver. This guy's kind of in a tier of his own, but he could win you your fantasy league, no problem. But Josh Gordon, got Josh Gordon as number 7 overall wide receiver. Just think he's a beast, and if he's on the field, he's going to dominate the games. Right now hasn't reported to training camp, but I did see a note today that he was maybe reporting this afternoon to training camp. Not sure what's going on there, but I think he's one of those players that I'm okay if people are off him and a little worried about his game and even coming back this year, because I want to get him at good value. But I got him number 7 overall. I love those players that could win you your fantasy league, and he's definitely one of them. I think most of the time he's going around the 3rd round, 4th round, but I would gonna try to get him on my team one way or the other. But I know there's probably several other people that feel the same way about Josh Gordon, just because he's such a polarizing player. But number 7 overall wide receiver, Josh Gordon there. Okay, number 8 overall, I still got Doug Baldwin there. Baldwin is kind of hurt and sitting out of camp. He started camp and then kind of maybe had a setback with his injury, so he's going to sit out the rest of training camp, come back for the beginning of the year. Baldwin and Russell Wilson have been teammates and had that connection for several years now. He's been really consistent. I think the Seahawks are definitely going to have to pass because their defense isn't going to be that special at all. So I think Baldwin should get plenty of opportunity. And I got Baldwin as my number 8 overall wide receiver. So next up, number 9 overall wide receiver, got T.Y. Hilton. I think T.Y. Hilton with Andrew Luck back is just going to be a stud this year. T.Y. Hilton, he's one of those guys can do a lot out on the football field. He can catch those screen passes, take him for 25 yards, take him to the house. He doesn't mind going over the middle of the field. He gets open, 20, 25 yards down the field and doesn't mind getting over the middle, which opens up the outside for him as well. So, I'm all in on T.Y. Hilton this year. I think he's going to have a big year with Andrew Luck. Like I said with Luck when I was going through the quarterback section, but definitely want to see him in preseason just to make sure he's got the deep ball and can chuck it down the field with ease like he always could before. But yeah, T.Y. Hilton, number 9 overall wide receiver. So number 10 overall wide receiver, I got Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen had a great year last year. He's a great route runner. Hey, he's got great hands. One concern, I guess, is, he switched QBs last year. Last year, he had Case Keenum as his quarterback and Sam Bradford for some of the year. This year, Kirk Cousins has went to the Minnesota Vikings. So Kirk Cousins should be an upgrade or at least even with Case Keenum. So wouldn't think it would affect the production of Adam Thielen too much at all. He is a talented player. Vikings offense should be good. I think, Thielen's maybe the 1A and Stephon Diggs is the 1B, but, that he is in a dual receiver offense there. Plus, they got Kyle Rudolph at tight end, which is going to take some red zone opportunities away from Thielen. But I think he's a solid wide receiver this year for your team. Definitely, when the ball comes to him, he's going to make the catch, which is always nice. So I got Thielen at number 10 overall. Number 11 overall wide receiver is Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams, last year I had him on a couple of my teams, and he just really impressed me with his grit and how tough of a player he was. I mean, obviously we seen him get concussed, laid out over the middle versus the Bears. One game, super scary hit, and then I think he was out on the field the next game, just balling out. Last year, Rodgers got hurt for the Packers, and, Jordy Nelson was the number one wide receiver on the Packers, and Rodgers going down severely hurt Jordy Nelson's production. But, Devontae Adams was still a solid wide receiver, even without, Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. So, really impressed with Devontae Adams last year. Have a little bit of confidence in him, going into this year already. Rodgers is healthy, so that should help him a ton because Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league. But the only thing, I kind of worried about is he's the number one wide receiver this year. Now, Devontae Adams is. Jordy Nelson's not there anymore. So, is that going to affect Devontae Adams' production? Is he going to get double covered? We'll just kind of have to wait and see how that all plans out. But overall player, he's very good. Got Devontae Adams as my number 11 overall wide receiver. So next up, A.J. Green. A.J. Green's been doing it for several years, been very productive for several years. Been on the Bengals for several years, and to be honest with you, I think it's starting to weigh on him. You saw him last year, kind of started out the year ball of fire, and then kind of faded as the year went on. You saw him getting frustrated and quit in a couple games, got in a fight in one game, got kicked out. So, I got him at the number 12 overall wide receiver, still very talented. As long as him and Dalton are healthy, he should get a huge target share. They should try to push the ball down the field. They're going to have to because, with Steelers and Ravens and Browns now in that division, I mean, there's going to be some points scored. So they're going to have to keep pushing the ball. So that's good for A.J. Green, but, is he going to keep his head in it? Is he going to stay healthy? That's the kind of concern I have with A.J. Green. But, number 12 overall wide receiver, if he falls to you, you got to take him, I think. So he's my number 12 overall, A.J. Green. So number 13 overall, got Mike Evans. Mike Evans, saw him have some up and down years lately, kind of goes where Jameis Winston goes. And right now, Jameis Winston's suspended. Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to be throwing Mike Evans the ball. And, ironically enough, Mike Evans kind of in the same boat last year as A.J. Green was. I mean, just real frustrated year. Saw him get frustrated out on the field and show it, get kicked out of games and stuff. So I think he's got a bounce back year in him. Whether this is the year or not, I don't know. Very talented player. But can he keep his emotions in check all year with the Bucs looking like they're probably going to have another struggle year? So, got him at number 13. Probably going to try to avoid Mike Evans if I can. 14th overall wide receiver, got Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is super talented wide receiver, been plagued by drops in the past. Got ton of upside though, got upside across the board. He's another one of those players, can catch the deep pass, can catch the short pass and take it deep. Don't really see him being too much of a red zone threat, at least not at this point in his career. But, with Oakland overall, for me, no matter what player you're talking about, I feel like Oakland is really predicated on health. As long as all those guys stay healthy, they got an older team for sure. Lynch, Carr, uh, Cooper is still pretty young, but Jordy there, Jared Cook. If all those weapons stay healthy, I think Cooper can be number one wide receiver for sure. But if any of those pieces gets hurt, then I think they're going to struggle a little bit. But Cooper's got upside. The sky's the limit. John Gruden's offense, he's gonna get some targets. So number 14 overall wide receiver for Amari Cooper. Number 15 overall wide receiver I have is Demaryius Thomas. Demaryius Thomas is still one of the best wide receivers at attacking the ball. Awesome red zone threat. You throw it up. DT's such a big wide receiver, tall, big bodied. He's going to wrestle that ball away from the defensive back and come down with it. Last year it looked like maybe he had lost a step, but he still was a productive wide receiver. Definitely has a better quarterback situation this year with Case Keenum coming in. We've seen Case Keenum push the ball down the field last year with the Vikings and make Thielen and Diggs both productive. So I think, I would stick with that same model with Keenum and let him chuck it to Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So I think, 90 catches for DT is possible. 1,200 yards. I think he could be a number one wide receiver again. Maybe if he gets a little bit faster, gets that extra first step back that we've seen from him in the past, he could get up there, get to that number one wide receiver spot. So still got some confidence in Demaryius Thomas, got him 15th overall. Number 16 overall wide receiver, got Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill had a huge year last year. I like Tyreek Hill because they set up specific plays to get him the ball, throw him little pitches, shovel passes, screen passes, but he's still that big, deep threat. I definitely could see him raising him up in my wide receiver rankings, depending on what we see from Mahomes in the preseason. I could see Tyreek Hill being right up there, 9th or 10th wide receiver, right with T.Y. Hilton for me this year. But I want to see something from Mahomes first, just to be a little more comfortable with his Mahomes production before I buy in again to Tyreek Hill this year. Tyreek's just a different type of talent with his speed. If Mahomes scrambles and gets lost and look down the field, Tyreek Hill is going to get lost. And if Mahomes can find him, that could be 5 touchdowns, big touchdowns this year. So, Tyreek Hill, got him 16th overall, but I could see him climbing up the board depending on what we see from Mahomes over the preseason. So, number 17th overall, right here, I got Emmanuel Sanders. I talked a little bit about Demaryius Thomas. Think Demaryius Thomas is going to be productive, but also Emmanuel Sanders in the Denver offense. As long as Emmanuel Sanders can stay healthy, he's kind of went back and forth with that in the past. I think he's going to be a really productive wide receiver. I could see him getting 75 catches, 1,000 yards, maybe 6 touchdowns. So 17th overall wide receiver, another situation there in Denver where Demaryius Thomas is the 1A wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders is the 1B wide receiver. So that makes it a little harder to defend when you're a defense, and they got 2 big-time wide receivers